Hey, how is everybody doing? Today we have a special guest here on stream with us. This is Elena from Ironfish. So thank you, Elena, for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Hi. Hi, thank you so much for having me. Super excited for this.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone done an interview yet on you guys yet on your project at all or anything or
In what sense? We've definitely been growing
yeah,
a
have you
lot.
guys
So
I think you guys have had a few AMAs before already, right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how are you doing today?
Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah. It's Tuesday here, but it's been
Okay.
nonstop since we mainnet launch. So it's
You
Mondays
guys have
feel
been
like
busy.
Fridays, Tuesdays feel like Mondays. So it's
Well, I guess we'll start off with some like easy questions, I guess, to kind of like get us to know like Ironfish itself, right? So what made your teams start this project?
oh man, yeah. So I started Ironfish, and my journey into crypto has started in 2017, which, to some people it's like not early enough. For some people, it's like crypto's like dog years. That was ancient times. Yeah, so I found out about Ethereum in 2017 in depth. I've heard of Bitcoin like from 2011 even, and Ethereum early on as well, but it didn't really click for me until roughly 2017. And that was when I met the Protocol Labs team in particular. I had a dinner at their house. Protocol Labs is responsible for projects like Filecoin or IPFS, for those who are not familiar. Um, and um, and yeah, I just was really sucked into the crypto community. Crypto is like a mind virus. The more you learn about it, the more you want to learn more about it, right? And so you just can't
Yeah,
really stop.
right.
Um, and I quit my full time job in July of 2018, I think, or roughly in that time area. And so for me, it was like, I really believed that crypto could be the next payments platform. So what is it that we're truly missing? What is the biggest impact that I could make in this environment? And for me, that was privacy. That was the very most obvious answer, especially at that era, the 2018, 2019 era. Most projects were working on scalability and stability. So how do we make stable coins? How do we make blockchains more scalable, which are valiant efforts and
Right.
huge projects. And to this day, we are still working on those things. But very few people were working on privacy. And so I thought that that was the most impactful thing that I could do. The technology behind it is extremely cool. So even back in 2018, it became pretty apparent that zero knowledge proofs were going to be kind of the answer for how we do privacy on chain. So the technology aligned, and it was really much aligned with philosophically with what I believed as well, that we cannot have this, borderless, unbiased currency without privacy. And so all those things together, kind of what led to what is now Ironfish so many years.
Okay.
That.
Okay. I like it. I like that. That was a very good answer. So really easy answer. Out of all the names that you guys could have came up with, right? Like when I interviewed Neox, I asked why Neox. They're like, so why Ironfish? Why you could have picked any name. Why that name?
Yeah, Ironfish is a really cool name. The origin of Ironfish actually came from a World War II reference. So in World War II, encryption in particular was a huge advantage in war because that determined whether or not you can have a secure communications line. That was way before something called asymmetric encryption. Again, encryption was just like such a big deal. And on the American side, they realized that there are so few native Navajo speakers that if you just put two native Navajo speakers on two sides of the communication channel, you can have a fairly unbreakable,
Right.
communications line because it was largely not a written language even. And so some of the modern terms, like a submarine, became what directly translates to as ironfish in native Navajo during that time. And so
Okay.
we picked it because it showed that encryption can be used for the side of good. It helped us win the war effectively. A submarine is something underneath, so it's private. The two elements are very primitive, so iron and fish, both tradable. And I like the fact that there were two primitive things that described a much more complex thing. So like iron and fish describe a submarine. So all those things came back. And then honestly, like it's an unusual name, and so it felt like it was much more memorable. If you look at like kind of
Yeah,
projects, it's just
it
coined
is
it.
pretty memorable when you do say the name Ironfish. You definitely know who you're talking about. Um, it would be good to be on that board seat when you guys are going through names. I'm sure that you guys came up with lots of ideas. So what would you say that is your team's background, I guess? What skills do they have, and do they come from the IT field and things like that, or is it just a bunch of, just everybody getting together who kind of just learned on their own, self-taught kind of a thing? So
Yeah, great question. The majority of the engineers that are building Ironfish don't have, the traditional crypto backgrounds. So, for instance, we have people from Uber. We have someone who worked at Microsoft. We have someone who worked at Citadel, right? We have someone who worked in healthcare. We have someone who worked at Amazon. So it's kind of like, we chose our engineers who were just really, really strong engineers. And the quality that we really admire is principles first thinkers. So all the engineers that are working in Ironfish have this pretty innate ability to have critical thinking, meaning that there are very few quote unquote like blockchain experts. There are very few people who have written layer ones before, and if they've done so successfully, they're unhireable. So really, is how do you hire people who can learn, who can think about things from principles first thinking in terms of like looking at existing projects and kind of reverse engineering those and really understanding the core principles behind blockchain. So all the people that Ironfish has hired so far have just been really, really great engineers who have kind of like learned on the job.
nice, very nice. So I noticed that you guys share the same algorithm with like a lithium. Is when you guys were picking an algorithm, was there any other ones that came to mind? Is there a particular reason why you chose this one? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So when we chose it, I don't think lithium was in the picture.
Okay.
And so our very first test net, so we started Ironfish in like literally 2018. And we actually chose the algorithm in 2018. And our very first testnet, our public testnet, was of April 2021, I believe. And that public testnet, very humbling experience in building layer one chains. It actually fell over in like 3 days, and so it took us a few months to kind of bring it back up. And so the very first incentivized testnet was in December of 2021. And so at that point, it felt like we shouldn't change the algorithm. We should just keep going with Blake 3. And a lot of people have actually asked us, like, do you have plans of changing the algorithm from Blake 3 to something else, especially post mainnet or pre mainnet? We decided not to because we wanted to be fair to the community that we were already growing the mining ecosystem, and to kind of continue our promise that we're going to keep with Blake 3. And so far, it honestly has served us well. Like a lot of the GPU miners that are currently mining Ironfish are like the home GPU miners. And the whole like thesis of Ironfish is that we really, really care about decentralization. And so we really like the fact that a lot of like quote unquote normal people were mining Ironfish.
Right, exactly, because that's the key to decentralization. So that being said, though, um, as you know, there's other companies out there like Bitmain and some other companies who also design ASICs and things like that. If I'm asking this question just in particular for GPU miners because I am a crypto mining YouTuber. So if they did develop some kind of an ASIC, would you guys change your algorithm to not allow the ASIC to come online on your guys' chain?
That's a great question. Honestly, we've been really talking about this internally ourselves. So there's pros and cons to both, and I do want to highlight that. So what's the pro of having an ASIC enter the field? Well, someone has literally spent millions of dollars in developing an ASIC, let alone hardware production. Like it typically takes like $1 million to just to develop like an ASIC design. And then on top of that, there's also hardware development. And so if an ASIC mining pool does come online, that means that someone poured in millions of dollars to support to support the network. And so, you know, that is actually like I do want to highlight that not ASICs are not evil all the time. You know, but the other side of that is if an ASIC does enter the system, then we lose the GPU community to some extent that we've already built. And we do care about decentralization. We do care about accessibility. Like the one thing that we're super proud of for Ironfish is that we made it extremely accessible even from the command line tool. We even have a built-in miner. Like the way you join mining pools, I hope is an easy experience. The way you host a full node should be an easy experience. And if not, please let us know in our Discord channel and we'll make it better. And so, that's a conversation we're having right now internally of like, if ASICs do come online, what are we going to do? Because we do potentially lose the GPU community that we've built up so far. Right now, currently, we do not know of any ASIC, ASIC designs or any like ASIC productions happening. So it's a question that we can still kind of answer. And honestly, like we will rely on the community to kind of answer this question for us. If an ASIC does come online, I think like we as a community would have to kind of decide what to do next. I think like another thing that I do want to highlight is post mainnet launch, our whole thesis is to decentralize Ironfish. And so it shouldn't be just up to us to decide whether or not we should change the algorithm. So, the more people we have supporting the community, the more voices we have to kind of sway that decision.
Well, I think that's a great answer. I really like that you guys are willing to listen to you guys' community, because there's other projects, and I'm not saying ASICs are bad by any means, because I do have like 2 ASICs. I have I have an L7 and an S19. Mm-hmm. So there is, like you said, there is pros and cons to having ASICs on your network, right? They're guaranteed hash rate, and people have sunk millions of dollars into development and doing batch runs and stuff like that. But then you risk losing some of the people who were there in the beginning with you to kind of get your project off the ground. So and I know Ethereum did it, right? It's just got to be, there's going to be a balance point, I think, that needs to happen, but it's hard to do really, because it's about price versus the network hash rate, which is uncontrollable. So it's definitely pretty hard.
I am actually also watching some of the comments that are coming in. Okay. So someone asked,
is there any you want to answer?
Yeah, well, one of the questions was, does that mean one node equals one vote? And so the analogy here is one CPU equals one vote, but however, Blake 3 is now GPU mineable, so it's like one GPU equals one vote. I think that's like a more analogous thing. And proof of stake is kind of like one coin equals one vote, if you were to think about it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also want to kind of point out that, so because we had such a long testnet, and again, the reason why we actually had such a long testnet, why we launched a testnet so early in the product development, is because we wanted to get feedback from users. And so we only saw a GPU implementation of Blake 3 kind of enter the system during our second testnet phase. So again, it felt like pretty unfair to change the algorithm at that point in time. And so we kind of stuck with Blake 3.
Mr. RPM has a question here. Is Ironfish worried about adoption into the real world use case with governments are now trying to regulate crypto, especially privacy coins such as Monero being illicit from many exchanges? This is one of my other questions that I had myself. So we'll give credit to Mr. Panda.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can definitely, so regulation in crypto is a pretty big question overall. There's a lot happening. I do also want to highlight this, the regulation questions are very US specific. Like the rest of the world, there are different regulations in different jurisdictions. So for instance, Japan and Korea are very anti-privacy. So there are certainly countries that, that have their own stringent regulations around crypto, but the US by far, I think, has probably the most complex as well as most stringent, but and also amplified by the fact that it's such a huge market. So in terms of privacy plus crypto in the United States, it is a hard question. In terms of Monero being delisted, I do have to point out that like when we talk about regulation in the United States context, what matters a lot is how the project presents itself and whether the project is willing to talk to regulators.
Right.
So Zuko, for instance, who's the CEO of Zcash, he has done a pretty extensive regulatory roadshow to basically support privacy and to kind of like propagate this message that privacy is a human right, privacy can be done safely. And so because he has put in so much effort, and the project overall, even since inception, has been like really approachable towards regulators and policymakers, that has actually shown a difference. And so Zcash, for instance, is more adopted by US regulatory exchanges. Versus Monero is a different community. And so like different communities present themselves differently. And so relationships actually do matter quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Relationships in the other countries and stuff like that, and how they communicate with obviously the local government and all that stuff also matters as well. So it's a pretty big, it's a lot that goes into the regulation question, because all these different countries have so many different, rules for all these different cryptocurrencies. Okay. Next question is, what problem is Ironfish fixing? If you had to give its main use case, what is Ironfish fixing that nobody else does?
Yeah, so great question. So we're building Ironfish to be the privacy platform for crypto. What we launched on mainnet was like step 0. Like we launched a layer 1 that can support custom assets or multi-asset support. So that's like step number 1. And what we're doing next is like, okay, we're building Ironfish to be a privacy platform. What assets is it supporting? Well, currently it's not supporting anything except for Ironfish. And so the next 6 to 12 months, the team is going to be really highly focused on how do we bring on more assets onto Ironfish? How do we start building bridges or partnering with bridge operators to bring assets from other chains such as Bitcoin or Ethereum, so that for the very first time you could have something like a private Bitcoin, or for the very first time you could have something as a usable private stablecoin. So if we could, for instance, wrap DAI from Ethereum on top of Ironfish, then all of a sudden you have actual digital cash. And for Bitcoin side, you could have private Bitcoin that's not relying on mixers, for instance. So that's like the problem that we're solving of, how do we bring privacy to crypto overall? Because right now, when you talk to people, especially outside of crypto, and you kind of show them Etherscan, and you show them how transparent the system is, honestly, they get pretty shocked. And so what we're trying to solve is, if crypto is going to be this unbiased, borderless currency, in my opinion, that cannot happen without privacy. And so Ironfish is not trying to compete with any other chain. We're actually trying to augment or add more value to existing crypto assets.
Okay. Yeah. Great answer. I love that. Love the answer. Let's see here.
When wallet? Can I answer that one?
Yeah, I was saving that to the end, but because I did like a member stream earlier just to ask them a few questions, and that was like a big question to them. I mean, I'm a Linux guy, and I even did a how-to video on how to build your guys' wallet, which is not very bad compared to most other wallets, so it's pretty usable. So, yeah, go ahead. When desktop wallet for
when desktop wallet. Soon. So I kind of want to be really transparent about like kind of our decision process. So we did view mainnet as almost like step 0 for Ironfish. Like we kind of actually launched mainnet maybe a little bit early so that we can get the clock started on decentralizing Ironfish. And so from our perspective, we actually have been building a desktop wallet for quite a while. And the one that everything we do is actually open source. So you can actually see the work that we're putting into the desktop wallet. You can literally go to our GitHub right now and like see the development on that wallet. And it's pretty much there. And so our rationale was we're going to focus on mainnet and make sure that mainnet goes extremely well. And then we're going to release the desktop app. And in the meantime, you can do everything from the command line tool. And we made it honestly, I think we did a pretty good job in making sure that the command line tool is very intuitive. And very easy to use, and that even install an Ironfish, if you have like the latest version of Node, It's a one-line command tool. So npm-install Ironfish, you have Ironfish in your command line, and then you can import your wallet, you can check your balance, you can do all those things through the command line. And so from our perspective, we thought like, okay, well, who are going to be our earliest adopters? Probably miners, probably very tech-savvy people. So, we thought that the command line tool wallet was going to be enough. We were wrong. People definitely wanted the wallet. But I do have to say that what was really incredible is that Fox Wallet integrated Ironfish very quickly. And so they were actually the first kind of like GUI wallet to support Ironfish. And that was actually perfect because our whole thesis, like we want to decentralize Ironfish, which means like other people in the ecosystem should be building those tools. And our thesis was actually proven correct. Like there are other people that that kind of came into the system and said, like, okay, privacy is something we want to support. We want to support Ironfish. And so Fox Wallet did exactly that. But in terms of the desktop app, like it is actually coming. I think it looks awesome. And again, everything we've done is like completely out in the open. You can, if you like go into the design channel on Discord, you can see Skylar, who's our designer, getting consistent feedback from the community and sharing those designs. The actual app, if you're super eager, you can actually go to our GitHub and like download it and like do it yourself. But if you wait literally a few more weeks, then it's going to be like an actual shipped project.
Okay.
That is,
so sometime mid to late June, they can. I would say that sometime in that time frame,
like
mid late
literally
June.
2 weeks. It's close.
So a little more patience, guys. I mean, look, I've used some command line wallets, and I've done some Linux and stuff like that, and I would say that this is probably one of the easier or easiest command line wallets to use. And I wish people were a little more accepting of Linux. It can be challenging and it can be tough, but I think you say Linux and people just instantly just it's either they know Linux or they just don't even want to do it. You know what I
It's
mean?
not even Linux. Like it runs on Mac OS, it runs in
Yeah.
Bash and Windows. Like literally, whatever terminal you have on whatever operating system, you can literally run Ironfish. Like it runs on Node,
Right.
which is
Yeah, it runs on
OS
Node.
agnostic, effectively. Yeah.
I think it's the easiest to run in Linux, but I mean, you could run it on any system. So, but I think that when you're introducing command line to people, and I think a lot of people have been spoiled with GUI, and you know what I mean, and having Windows and things that are very user friendly. In the end, you just click a button. I think that's what everybody looks for. But it looks great, man. I've seen some pictures that you guys have been putting up on your site of the desktop wallet, and it looks amazing so far. So can't wait for that to happen. Let's see here. Is there what is the future of Ironfish? Like, what do you see Ironfish being 5-10 years from now? Like, what's the end goal for Ironfish?
Yeah. So the end goal for Ironfish, like this is going to be, it sounds like maybe a little bit cliche and maybe a little like visionary, but that is kind of the question. So in the 90s, like the first like mention of crypto wars actually happened in the 90s. And again, it kind of goes back to encryption. So encryption, like in the 90s, we just came out of the Cold War. And so encryption was viewed as like almost like a weapon. Like it was a dangerous technology that we should like monitor and regulate. And one way it manifested is when Netscape, which was the very first browser, when it launched, was called SSL, which is like the precursor technology to HTTPS. They were forced to launch the international version of Netscape to have weaker encryption than the domestic one, so that the NSA or the CIA could potentially crack traffic that was happening outside the United States. So I just want to like preface it with that. And like fast forward to today, you'll be hard pressed to find a website that does not use HTTPS, right?
Right.
We kind of take this encryption thing for granted. And so what I view Ironfish is, the 5 to 10 year goal is we want to be like the plumbing for crypto. Like we want to be the Lego piece for privacy for crypto. It's just that people use Ironfish without even knowing about it. Like you and I are using HTTPS right now, but we don't have to think about like what is Divvy Hallman like key exchange, right? Like we just kind of use the technology and it just works and it's streamlined. And so, again, like what we showed for Mainnet was like step 0. How do we do a foundational layer that supports multi-asset, that supports full privacy, that supports zero knowledge proofs? That's kind of just like the fundamental base for privacy. And then like the next step is how do we integrate more assets? And then the next step is like we're inching towards this future of how do we make Ironfish the dominant Lego piece for privacy for crypto across chains. And then eventually, hopefully, becoming the plumbing for crypto. People should be using Ironfish without even knowing it's there.
Right. I like that. I like that. It's. I mean, I'm excited for you guys. I've been watching you guys for a little while now. You know what I mean. So did some son of a techie did some videos on your guys' testnet stuff, and I kind of started getting into your guys' project at that point. I
Nice.
didn't even realize that you guys had been around as long as you guys have been. You guys have been around for quite some time.
Yeah,
Um,
it was kind of a nonlinear journey. I do have to say that. So we started in like late 2018, 2019, but we raised our seed around in 2020, like mid 2020. We hired some people and we actually rewrote the entire code base in mid 2020. So like the company is like 4.5 years, but the existing code base is like 2.5 to 3 years. So, that's part of the reason why the journey was so long.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, man, but exciting stuff going on. Um, was there any of I didn't even read this. Was there a pre-sale or a pre-mine of any kind that you guys did have?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to your previous question of like, well, who are the engineers working for Ironfish? And, like for Ironfish, we are literally hiring the best engineers. A lot of them come from like top-notch Silicon Valley companies who have like incredible engineering skills. Well, you have to pay them salaries. Like no one's going to do this for free. And you have to retain talent too. Like,
Right.
this is a multi-year project. It's actually like a really big like feat. And so you have to make sure that not only do you like hire the best talent, but you make sure they stay out with your project throughout the years. And, quite frankly, like if you're hiring senior engineers, they have families and mortgages, like they have things that they need to pay their bills,
Right.
Which means like the project has to fund itself somehow. And we did that through VC money. So we raised money from honestly top-notch VCs who have been extremely helpful so far, who have like really believed the vision of Ironfish and the vision of privacy, and who are like our long-term holders of the project. And so the way our tokenomics kind of work is that the Genesis block, does go to some of those supporters who have supported like Ironfish early on. And I know the crypto community is like pretty, what's the right word, sour against VCs entering the space. But I'll push back on that of, show me a project that's been successful in the last literally decade that does not have VC support, right? For the things that I mentioned, like I think Bitcoin, Ethereum are extraordinarily special. And that's, and those are the exceptions to the rule. But if you're trying to build something, especially that's extremely like high technical, it has a really polished user experience, you do have to bootstrap yourself with VC money.
Yeah, that is true, and like exactly like even I have a hosting company. It's just like we're not taking paychecks right now, but in the end, we're gonna have to get paid, right? It's just like you can't work for free forever. Like people have bills to pay, they have mortgages, they have kids. You know what I mean? It costs money to get that kind of talent and experience that you guys needed to be able to get your project going. So
Yeah.
completely understandable, because I know sometimes you mentioned like VC or funding or something like that. People get a little hesitant. There's a little sourness there, but sometimes I do think it's warranted and is good. So it just depends on the project itself.
Yeah. Someone did say, like, what about Bitcoin and Monero? Again, those are the exceptions to the rule. And Ethereum obviously is in that bucket as well. But if you're going to start like jumpstarting this today, it's really hard to do this without paying people money.
Yeah, exactly. So we got a question. I'm assuming this is probably from somebody who Mr. Matt here, he has a question, or I don't know if it's a question more. Same. He's like, I've unfortunately sent Iron into the void several times. Would really be nice to add some kind of warning if the node isn't on the latest version. Um, when he's sending his coins, that you do need to make sure that your stuff is up to date. That's like in my little VM. I like make sure everything's up to date. I make sure I have the memo. And you kind of have to go. I like to go through my checklist.
Yeah. Well, so the other thing is, and Matt, please feel free to go to our Discord, because if you're not on the latest version, you should still be able to send a transaction. And if something's incompatible, then the transaction would revert, like it would fail. So, so that I'm not sure what happened there, but feel free to go to our Discord and just hop in the questions channel.
I also wonder, Matt, if you're still on the test net and you didn't migrate to mainnet.
Yes.
Is what has happened. Because I was gonna, even after I said that, I realized that I was like on one previous version and I was still able to send coins. Now, when you do send coins to exchanges, most of them require you to also add the memo from the wallet. So you need to make sure that you do that as well. It's kind of a two-part transaction, not just the wallet address. So definitely make sure that you're putting in both of those things. Well, Mr. Way Too Fast for you. I don't know if this question can be answered or not. He's asking who are the top VC funding donors, and also he was wondering about new exchanges. Obviously, new exchanges that you guys are hopefully planning to get listed on.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we can't talk about exchange listings for several reasons. One is we're a U.S. company, and so it would be a bad idea to do that. Two, I also don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. So far I can actually very truthfully say we have not paid for exchange listings, and all the exchanges that have listed us so far have done so through community connections, which has been again incredible to see. Like, the whole point of Ironfish is to be decentralized and for the community to really help the project. And so the exchanges that have supported us so far have done so in their own accord. So that's been really cool to see. On the investor side, I can certainly talk about that. So again, we've actually worked with extremely helpful, genuinely helpful investors. So our top investors have been Andreessen, ACCZ Crypto, Electric Capital, if you're familiar with them. Electric Capital is an extremely impressive fund, and they've been extremely helpful to the project. Andreessen has actually been extremely helpful in terms of regulatory help and brand and message awareness, and all that good stuff. Sequoia, which is maybe less known in the crypto space, but definitely one of the top investors in Silicon Valley. They have been extremely helpful. Someone mentioned Balaji and Jeff Weiner. So those are our angel investors. Don Kwon was also an angel investor. This was, obviously before the Terra Luna collapse. so we do have that. And again, we've actually been extremely transparent with all of this. You can find all of this information on our blog posts.
Right, and I think that's great. You guys are being transparent. You guys are not trying to hide any of this information, which is also pretty key inside the crypto scene, right? Going back between the VC stuff, that kind of sour, but you guys are also being pretty transparent and seamless about, who you guys are getting funding from. So I do think that's a really good thing. What's been your most challenging thing at Ironfish?
Oh man, that's a great question. So our team is very lean. So if you look at other layer one protocols that have that have kind of launched, their teams were much bigger than ours. We have a very lean team of I want to say elite ninjas. And we've gotten to that point over the years. And so in terms of my role, it's literally ever changing. And so I'm an engineer. I was a software engineer at Airbnb. And all of a sudden you kind of had to learn how to do all these other roles. How do you market the project? As a software engineer, it's not something you do at all. How do you raise money from VCs? Tokenomics, the emissions curve. I literally started reading, the monetary theories, right? And figuring out what is the M1 supply of different currencies. Why did other cryptocurrencies choose their emissions curve? So kind of have to all of a sudden read economic books and different economic theories. So that was surprising, right? When we talk to regulators, it's all of a sudden it's whoa, I have to be extremely articulate and really explain Ironfish in a way that makes sense to them. And design, obviously really care about design. So all of a sudden you're oh, I have to be a product person too. So it's I went from a software engineer to picking up all these roles, and I'm not I'm not the best at these roles, right? And so, but when you're at a startup, you have to be you have to understand that even though you may not be the best marketer in the world, you might be the best person in this company to do this role, and it's on you, right? And so that's been like a pretty wild ride of like picking up all these hats. So if anyone's, curious what it takes to kind of like run a company, let me know, because there's definitely a ton of learning.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that. My hosting company, we run pretty lean right now. There is we don't have many members, so I do understand where people have to wear like about 6, 7, 8, 10 hats, at one time. It definitely can, really draw out your days. What's up, Hawk? Mr. Hawk Crypto Money had a question, but we did already answer this earlier in the stream. He says right now, your GPU mineable, will Ironfish stick with GPUs or push back for ASICs on the network? They actually said that they would take it to the community, and do it that way. So I think that's really good. So as of right now, you guys don't have any plans of changing the algorithm, right?
As of right now, there are no plans of changing the algorithm, and there's also no ASICs entering the system. So, like at this moment in time, we really appreciate and like the fact that the GP community is so strong, because again, it allows for better decentralization. So it's like we don't want to like over engineer and like fix a problem that's not there. But once it does become an issue, then we have to kind of open it up to the community.
Yeah, I definitely like that it's a community vote, and I like how you guys seem pretty community driven. So that's kind of a huge part, especially in the crypto scene. So definitely
Yeah.
brings up a lot of loyalty and stuff like that. So I think that's great. Let me see if there's any other questions that we may have here.
I mean, one of the questions was like, we raised close to $30 million. Like, where did that money go? So, like, the
Oh,
money is
Mr.
there. Not like,
Mr.
well,
Wayback.
I want to be like pretty transparent about this too.
Right.
Was it all marketing? No, it was definitely not all marketing. We've actually been extremely lean for how we do marketing, which has been to some degree to our detriment. But in terms of like where that money went, we still have it. Like, we have launched mainnet, which means like we need to keep working on the project for like years. We can't dump on the market, right? So like we
Right.
actually need to have a cash treasury so we can continue paying payroll and growing the team and hiring people without dumping on you guys, right? So,
Right.
so that's part of the reason. Like, we have a pretty strong treasury, so we can definitively say we are here for the long term. Like, we are committed to building, because we actually still have all that. Or
Right. That way,
more of it.
when the lean times come, you know what I mean? You guys don't have to do more fundraising, or, possibly let people go, or people are leaving obviously because they can't be paid and stuff like that. So I think having something like that, stashed away long term is a good play on you guys. Mr. Second TL Mining, I think, has a pretty good question. Um, what piece of the Ironfish roadmap is Elena most excited for?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about Ironfish being the privacy platform for so long. And again, like what we launched from mainnet was like step zero. Like, we launched this fundamental layer. Okay, great. What assets does it support? Currently does not support any assets. So our next job is like, how do we like actually build those bridges? And so that for sure, that's like actually the most exciting part of the roadmap.
Yeah, exactly. Building all those bridges with all those other crypto projects. I think that's going to be great. Is there any news that you could tell us, things that are happening right now that we can expect in the near future from Ironfish? Besides the wallet that everybody keeps asking about, which will
Yeah.
be Hawk. Hawk, I know that you were late because he's my partner. So we do Terra Ass Tuesday and we own the company together. Hawk, it's coming in like a month. Okay, you got to wait.
But also the CLI wallet is available. Sorry, what was the question before that? I kind of got distracted reading all the comments.
So it's all right. Any news?
Short term, yeah.
Yeah, short term.
So again, everything we do is super out in the open. So in terms of like the next like really short term like timeline of like what the team is working on. So we launched Ironfish, and the community that we have right now is way different than the community we had during testnet. So so right now we have miners, like professional miners instead of testnet miners, and we have like actual exchanges, and we have wallets, and we have integrators and like potential partnerships. And so their asks are different than the asks we had during testnet. And so right now, like in the next 3 months, we are just listening to all the people that have integrated Ironfish so far and reacting to that. So for instance, like we're talking to professional miners, and optimizing the networking layer has been like a huge priority for us as a direct feedback from them. In terms of like other people, like exchanges or any user of Ironfish who needs to create transactions that are pretty hefty, we've been hearing this feedback of like, oh, well, transaction generation is taking a long time in comparison to other projects. And the reason for that is because every transaction for Ironfish is private, so it has a zero knowledge proof attached to it. The zero knowledge proof generation is expensive. And if you're like making a business, and like if you're building transactions that are heftier, that means you're using more CPU, which means it's costlier for you to support Ironfish. Sure. So right now we're actually thinking about, okay, how do we optimize transaction generation? And then, for miners in particular, what really matters is the speed of verification. So again, every transaction has a zero knowledge proof, which means verifying transactions is a bit slower than non-privacy chains. And so the team is really working towards optimizing transaction verification as well. The same thing goes for block template generation. So for miners, you have to first kind of make this block before you mine on top of it. So that's called block template generation. And so again, that is going to be slower than the non-privacy chains because you have to verify all these zero knowledge proofs. So now the team is working on that as well. So right now it's like very reactionary towards the things we're hearing, because we want to make sure that Ironfish is like, I keep using this line, but like a pleasure to use. Right. And a way to do that is to kind of listen to those concerns.
Okay. So I like those answers, because man, that's really cool. It's almost like you're really trying to speed up your blockchain essentially on multiple different steps is what exactly. It sounds like to me.
Yeah. But it's like listening to, like before, like when we're doing the testnet, we didn't hear that it was as concerning that, block template generation is taking too long. But now that people are professionally mining and like they have like actual money on the line, they're giving us this feedback with real analysis of like, look, like because your networking layer is, not as optimized as it could be, we're losing revenue. And they're actually providing like extremely good feedback to us, just that we can, go back and actually, work on those optimizations.
I definitely like that, man. You guys are always getting a lot from the community. You guys are always taking it in and making optimizations. I like it. I like when projects are involved with their community. Bacon, Eggs, and Hash has a question. He says, Elena, I was at your Q&A on launch day, and I thought you had I'm gonna say handled the project very well, or had the project very well thought out. I take it you're eventually going to want have a point of sale function for Ironfish. I'm assuming some kind of like an on-ramp for users, who are maybe, you just use fiat, you know what I mean? Like the normal everyday, as DJ Mines would say, Timmy, the everyday Timmy. So.
Yeah. So point of sale, so point of sale is kind of like the holy grail for a lot of crypto projects. So like, how do we get it mainstream? And I think there's a lot of problems to that we as a crypto industry, like altogether, have to solve. So like what we're trying to focus is really the privacy aspect. And so like right now, like, one step at a time, you have to do one thing really well and then progress to the next thing. So point of sale is kind of like, the things that would get crypto in general to point of sales is just so many steps that Ironfish is not directly focusing on. It's like scalability, stability, acceptance into credit card systems. And so like, eventually the entire crypto industry does want to get there. But right now Ironfish is just like really focused on how do we bring privacy to crypto assets.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, he has another good question that I scroll down to. So I know that when I first started mining, that I was able to do the graffiti function, right? And I was using Team Red Miner, but then they removed it. So, can you still do the graffiti function? And is there any point to the graffiti function? I guess other than knowing that, hey, Mining King mine this block because this is my symbol I made. You know what I mean, or whatever.
Yeah, great question. So that's actually another thing where we learned, like, it was something that was not as well known to us during testnet phase, and it became a lot more like apparent during mainnet phase. So during testnet phase, we use the graffiti field for people to self-identify which block they mined so that we can award them points on the leaderboard. And that worked really well, and people put their graffiti in, and it was really cool to see like all these blocks come in with like, you know, miners putting in whatever they wanted to put into the block. And then post mainnet, we realized, or like we started noticing that the graffitis were like gibberish. They didn't make sense. It's just like, you know, weird ass keys. And so we like, again, talked to our community, and we realized that the way the block is structured, the graffiti is last. And so miners are using the graffiti as a secondary nonce field to introduce more randomness so that they could have optimization in mining. That was a lesson we learned. So you know, I'm not promising anything, but probably if we ever do a hard fork, we're going to put the graffiti on top so that people can use the graffiti field, not as a mining optimization, but to put it as a string, like put whatever string they want in there. It's more like a vanity field. Like if you're a miner and you want to self-acknowledge that you mined this thing.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I put mine in there. I put King in there. I thought it was cool. We have a Patrick from Mr. Patrick Murphy. He says, were you surprised to see the amount of hash rate on the network beginning with the Genesis block? Were you guys expecting more or less hash rate on your mainnet launch day?
Yeah, great question. It was a lot more than we had expected. So, you know, I think on day one or like in hour one, we had something like 200 times the hash power as peak of testnet phase 2, which was our busiest testnet. And then like it ballooned to being like literally 500 times the hash power that we saw in testnet phase 2. So it was definitely a lot. In terms of how the launch actually went, it went pretty smoothly. Like, you know, we launched like different testnets quite often, so we kind of had the muscle for how to launch these networks. And so one of the tricks of launching a proof of work chain or a network is that you need to kind of guess the initial difficulty pretty correctly in order for the chain to like start, you know, building blocks at a speed that is reasonable. And so I think we actually did really well. We talked to our community, which was another theme. And we talked to the miners that we saw participate in our test nets, and we got feedback from them. And we pretty much nailed it on like the initial difficulty for the Genesis block. You know, I think the first couple blocks started coming in at 90-second intervals, and our target time is 60 seconds, and it actually went down to 60 seconds really quickly.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So let's see here, Mr. Bacon, Eggs, and Hash. This is going to go kind of back to the graffiti, which I think is kind of a good question. He says, that's what I was getting at the point of sale. Ironfish is in a unique position with the graffiti function to sign similar to a pin on a debit card.
Okay. So there's a misconception of the graffiti field and the memo field of a transaction. So every transaction has a memo field. So for instance, you could use it as like giving like a merchant, for instance, more information about why the transaction is happening. Because again, Ironfish is a privacy chain. And so like if you wanted to let the merchant know of like, hey, this is me, I'm buying this thing, you could potentially put that in the memo field. And the graffiti field is on the block. So whichever miner mines that block, they get to put whatever they want in that graffiti field, if that makes sense. I think that was the misconception.
Yeah, exactly. And then see here, Ivan, I'm not going to try your last name, sir. I will butcher it. So we'll just say Ivan. Ivan's asking is he says, do you guys have a partnership with mobile wallet, Fox Wallet? Do you guys consider it to be a safe place to store your coins?
Yeah. So again, like the Fox Wallet introduced Ironfish, and they reached out to us when the integration was basically complete. And that was super impressive. Like, I do want to say that supporting a privacy coin on a mobile wallet is extremely hard. And the reason for that is like for Ethereum, like how does MetaMask work? MetaMask is a Chrome extension, and it uses Infura, which is a third-party like node hosting provider to ask Infura questions about the wallet. So because Ethereum is 100% transparent, MetaMask can very easily ask a full node, such as Infura, hey, what's the balance for this wallet? And because the full node would automatically index everything, that question becomes really easy. But for a privacy chain, everything's encrypted. And so you can't like ask a server, like, what is the balance for this particular wallet? Because everything is private. And because of this situation, it's really actually hard to support privacy coins on mobile wallets. And so we were extremely impressed that that Fox wallet just like sort of integrated Ironfish. So
Nice.
so very, very impressed with their technical team. Huge props to them. The second part is like, do you consider it safe? Again, I was really impressed with their technical skills. I don't endorse their safety. Like I don't, I'm not gonna. I don't want to say like, oh yes, it's like 100% safe, and then someone uses their money. Like I don't want to be responsible for that. But in terms of our interaction with their engineering team, we've been really impressed.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I don't think that that you're gonna be able to fully endorse obviously a mobile wallet. You know what I mean? Because you can't be held liable for that. But obviously, always use at your own risk. You know what I mean? And be safe when you guys are using other wallets out there.
Yeah.
I've never heard of Fox Wallet though, so I will have to definitely give it a try. I've just been using your guys' command line wallet, which has been great for me. We have another question from
Is this a
Manmit.
real lady? I don't know. What do you think? Am I an AI lady?
He's asking, what was the thinking behind the Genesis block tokenomics?
Yeah. So I kind of answered this question in the past, but happy to go over it again. Like the Genesis block is how a layer one basically funds itself. And so some of the rationale there was we wanted to introduce the best investors so that we can actually pay our engineers competitive salaries and retain talent. And part of the reason was to, some of the Genesis allocations did go to those investors. In terms of the greater tokenomics, like we put in a lot of thought and effort into thinking about the emissions curve and how to think about Ironfish long term, how to make sure that the emissions curve gives you relatively good inflation throughout its years. We thought a lot about the circulating supply in terms of making sure the community has the majority of the coins. And so, yeah, the tokenomics paper is on the website, so feel free to read more about that.
Oh, well, the next question I have for you is gonna be, I was thinking of this a little bit, but yeah, Patrick beat me to it. Since we're on the topic of wallets, let's see here, where to go. Off topic a little bit, but in terms of privacy, does Elena have an opinion on Ledger and obviously other hardware wallets like Treasure and things like that? Do you guys are you guys trying to get obviously be accepted by Ledger and Treasure and be able to support native hardware wallets, or is that going to be something difficult to do being a privacy coin?
Yeah, so definitely want to be on hardware wallets. Definitely want to make sure that people have as many options in terms of custody and Ironfish. But I think this question in particular was like, what is my opinion of like what Ledger did? So just for context, Ledger has this feature to recover the keys by sharding the key such that multiple entities have different shards. So in case you lose your seed phrase, that can be reconstructed. And especially during the experience of Ironfish, the biggest lesson that I learned is, communication to your community and to your users matters so much. Like happiness is when you meet the expectations of users, and unhappiness is when you do not meet the expectations of users. And if you set the expectation to be one thing and you delivered a different thing, that's when people get upset. So the expectation for Ledger was that your private key never leaves the enclave. That was the expectation from the user base. And what Ledger did is they introduced a feature that they thought was going to be more convenient for users and more safe. Again, like if you lose your private key, like you're kind of screwed. And so they're trying to fix that problem. But by doing so, they broke the very key like expectation that they had, or the expectations that they set, which is that your private key never leaves the enclave. So they broke that expectation, but in trying to pursue something good. So I think the real kind of like misstep there was not properly setting expectations for their users.
Yeah, I won't get into the whole Ledger thing. me, and Chump Change, who's also part of Misfit Mind, who do Saturday Night Live. I understand why Ledger did what they did. Right, they need to expand their market to attract people who aren't as tech savvy, who may have lost their their seed phrase and stuff like that, and those kinds of things. It kind of makes regular people not want to participate, really, right? Because it's like if you lose your debit card, right? What do? You go to the bank, right, and or you call them, and then they send you a new debit card and have you set up a new PIN. it's kind of the same thing. And the thing is they were giving you the option to opt in. You don't have to opt in. That was my whole point. So I
Yeah.
understand both arguments from both parties, and I'm okay either way because they gave you an option to either opt in or out. But I think the way they went about it was executed poorly, right?
Yeah.
So I think the execution was bad. But I won't go too much into the ledger stuff. um, do you guys have any plans to have any kind of iteration with Zelcor?
Not yet, but again, we welcome all partnerships. You know, if anyone has contacts for any project that they want or any other project that they want to see Ironfish on, just either partnerships at Ironfish.network or Discord, send them our way.
And then, oh well, okay, bacon, eggs, and hash. Here we go, man. He has a lot of questions. Being all about privacy, has Ironfish considered creating their own hardware wallet?
Oh man, no. And the reason for that is we have talked to some other crypto projects that have tried to, like, let's say, work on their own project, like their own layer 1 or whatever project, and have a hardware component. Developing hardware is like a totally different beast. Like, developing hardware is hard. It's a totally different skill set. And so no is the answer, because we are experts in building software. We're not experts in building hardware. And that's just like a different skill set that doesn't quite match our business model. And I think I think people really misunderstand or underappreciate how hard it is to develop hardware. So a lot of appreciation for the hardware wallets or hardware companies that are doing that today, because it is like, hardware is way harder to work on, in my opinion, than software. Like, you build it and you can't, there's no undo button. Like, you just spent millions of dollars making it hard.
Right.
Hardware.
You got to go back to R&D and go do it again. Right. So
exactly,
it's definitely a whole different animal, and it can get very expensive very, very quickly. Let's see here. Come on, guys. Let's keep the questions going. You guys wanted this. We got her live. Let's see here. Here you go. Second TL Mining asks, is there a DEX yet for Ironfish?
Not yet, because we're not bridged to smart contract chains like Ethereum. Again, it is definitely our goal to either partner or to encourage other people to build bridges, or even to build ourselves to bridge Ironfish to Ethereum. That is like a strong goal in the relatively short-term future. But no, because that's not there yet, there's no DEXs.
Okay. And then I don't think I haven't heard this mentioned.
Can I answer that one?
Which? Oh yeah, go. Which one?
Oh, why telemetry? The last question.
Okay, yeah.
So Ironfish does have a telemetry feature. You can check it out at stats.ironfish.network. It is optional. You can turn it off. If you're running a full node from the CLI, it's off by default. So the people that, like the stats page, we're getting that information from people who have intentionally ran a secondary command to provide that telemetry. And the reason why we did that is so that we can make Ironfish better. So again, for instance, like, we launched mainnet. We had feedback from miners that the networking layer could be optimized. If you don't know what your baseline is, you can't optimize something. So getting telemetry from nodes gives us information about like how fast do blocks propagate on average, how many forks there are in the network, where are the nodes coming from, like what's the latency concerns, like how fast are nodes syncing, is there discrepancy between like chain head, right? So these are all the things that we're getting from telemetry, and it helps the team continuously make Ironfish better, and it adds more transparency for how the network is doing. Again, it is totally optional, and it's not even on by default.
Oh, it's not on by default. Okay.
Someone said telemetry was on when I ran it by default. So if you ran the command once, it gets saved in your config file. So if you restart Ironfish, or like even re-download Ironfish, but you don't delete your config folder, which is in the like a private Ironfish folder, then you still have it, but otherwise it's actually off by default. Like if you ever ran the command once and saved in your configs, then it's there, and you have to run a secondary command to turn it off.
I'll have to go look that up on your GitHub. I don't have the telemetry on, so.
Okay, cool. Well, if you turn it on, then you'll be contributing to the stats page.
Okay. I like that. That's giving back to you guys. You guys can make sure everything's working as smoothly as possible, which is great. Let's see here. I thought there was one more up here. I don't. So this one, I don't think I've ever heard anything about this on your guys' project, but CryptoPerks is their staking in the future of for Ironfish.
Yeah. So for that to happen, we would need to change from proof of work to proof of stake. Currently, there is no plan to do so. We are kind of continuing to be a proof of work chain. If for instance we bridge to Ethereum and there might be some staking optionalities there, that could be an option. If like in future years we switch to proof of stake, that could be an option. But at this moment in time, there is no staking for Ironfish, and there's currently no plans to have those functionalities.
I thought as much, but I figured I give the question up. Let's see here. This is I don't even know about this question, but can we get more information or description of the decrypt key holders that can verify the blockchain's transactions?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question how I understand it. So if I didn't understand it correctly, feel free to ask it again. So every transaction is fully encrypted. And so meaning that it hides all the sensitive information about the transaction. The way transaction verification happens is through zero knowledge proofs. So zero knowledge proofs prove honest computation. So for instance, in Bitcoin or in Ethereum, the validation works through transparency. So if I send you one Bitcoin, and whoever needs to verify that transaction has to be able to see that my wallet in the past has had at least a Bitcoin, and I'm spending funds that I actually do have. For Ironfish, we did that through zero knowledge proofs. So again, zero knowledge proofs prove honest computation. So we can say, look, even though this transaction is fully encrypted, I can give you this cryptographic proof that the transaction is correct and it was constructed in a correct way, even though you cannot see those sensitive details. So the decryption key, there's no decryption key per se, like full nodes don't decrypt the transaction in order to verify it. That's like the beauty of zero knowledge proofs. The transaction can be verified while it's still encrypted.
Okay. Does that answer your question? I believe that was Bacon. Was that? No, that was Patrick Murphy. Patrick Murphy, if that wasn't what you were asking, just maybe re-ask the question again to where we could better understand it. And then, so Mining Stacker has a question, which is any ETAs or possible timelines for the first bridge or wrapped assets? Are we, a year away, months away, weeks away? When do you guys plan, or hopefully you guys would like to have the first bridge?
Yeah, so after the mainnet launch, we actually split into being the IF Labs, which has previously been the company, and the Ironfish Foundation. And so I'm actually on the foundation side. So the foundation's effort is to decentralize Ironfish and to have partnerships so that we can kind of progress Ironfish to being this privacy platform. So right now, the foundation is really, really focused on making sure that we have at least one bridge by end of year. Whether or not it's through engineering efforts of IF Labs or through partnerships with others. So I cannot give like concrete, timeline, like it's going to, come out in whatever date. But I can tell you that we are very, very much focusing on it. In terms of what asset is going to come first, I'm not sure. Bitcoin is definitely one of the things that we want to support. So we'll definitely put efforts there. But I cannot guarantee anything and cannot promise anything. Because if we promise and under-deliver, then the SEC might come and get us. So I can tell you that we have strong efforts to do that. And like selfishly, I definitely want to support Bitcoin because there's not really been a usable private Bitcoin that's not been relying on mixers, and so that is definitely a very exciting use case for me personally.
Well, I have been asking many, many questions of you, man. You have just been great, a great guest on the show. You've just answered everything. I wish all the guests were like you. So
We're
transparent.
just trying to be transparent. Yeah.
Yeah, full of knowledge. I like it. If you guys got anything else for miscellanea, please please go ahead and comment in the chat. I don't have anything else. I'm relying on these guys now. You guys got any last minute questions for Elena?
Let me scroll. Yeah, telemetry not always bad, just not super private. Totally. Again, telemetry, you can not contribute to telemetry. So telemetry just helps us make the project stronger, and you'll be contributing to the stats page, but definitely very optional.
Yes, Mr. Patrick Guy, and he's a very technical dude. I know him personally, so he does ask some very hard questions. But yes, Patrick, you do not have to participate in the telemetry. You can it's off by default. So you're not
Yeah.
you're not doing it right away. So you don't have to participate.
Yeah, for the desktop app, we are thinking of having it on by default, but there's going to be a way for you to turn that off, and it'll be on the onboarding screen as well, so you can't miss it. What's the incentive to run a node? So the incentive to run a node is the way, like, this is actually not just unique to Ironfish. Every single privacy coin has this. So if you want to get the balance of your wallet, you actually have to decrypt all the or attempt to decrypt all the transactions in the block, and that's how you get your balance and more information about your wallet. So one of the incentives to run a full node is that you can have a fully self-hosted wallet that is 100% private. If you were to use something like a mobile wallet, you might be relying on a full node to do the decryption for you, or to send you like blocks that are kind of stripped from various things. So if you really want to have like full privacy, like not trusting any other service, the only way to do that is to run your full node. And you'll be helping the network also. Like,
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you're helping the Ironfish network grow. So, let's see here. McConstant has, how are you preventing the supply chain poisoning for your project? Do you ensure your art npm packages are not compromised with code signing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've been pretty careful every time we introduce a new dependency. And there's actually really good tools that we rely on that actually like show you if you're having a codependency that might have a vulnerability. So that's how we do it. And obviously, there's a problem for literally any like development project of like how do you make sure your dependencies are solid. The other way to do that is through fixed versioning. So you like rely on dependency and you fix the version so that you don't have like auto upgrades. And again, everything we do is open source, so you can literally look at it yourself.
Right. So maybe this might answer. I think Patrick reworded his question here. Is I was under the impression that there are individuals, for example, in Exchange with Windows keys that allow them to see a decrypted transactions. Perhaps it is said in order to verify as an audit.
No, so there is no entity that has like that has a global view key. So for Ethereum or Bitcoin, for instance, you have a private key and a public key. And for Ironfish, you have a private key, a public key, and a view key. So if you create the wallet, then you have the control of your own view key. So if you want to provide an audit for your wallet, then you can give someone the view key. And if you're interacting with an exchange, you have to assume that you have no privacy in the exchange, regardless if you're using privacy coin or not, because every action that you do is on the exchange. So they'll know whatever you do. But no, like no one is allowed to decrypt your transactions unless they have the view key. So for instance, if you use an exchange and they created the wallet on your behalf, then automatically, obviously they have those view keys because they created your own wallet. But if you create your own wallet and it's fully self-hosted, self-custody, there's no one that can decrypt your transactions unless you give them the view key.
Okay. So the view key is they'll only be able to see it if you gave them that particular key that they could actually see that.
Correct. There is no individual that can decrypt your transactions unless you gave them that permission.
Okay, so Mr. Hillbilly Exchange has one. I'm sorry, not Exchange, Hillbilly Change. Sorry. Do you plan on implementing a different level of node architecture?
Not right now. So like it would be awesome to have a different implementation of Ironfish. Like one of the keys for decentralization is, like how many nodes are in the network, how many open source developers are in the network, and then the third pillar obviously is, how many different node implementations there are in the network. And not very many chains have this property. Like I think Ethereum has like two like most popular implementations of their node. Actually, well, they have a lot more, but two of the more popular ones. And very few other layer one chains have alternative implementations. That is like the true test of decentralization if you have different implementations of your node. But it is really hard. Like it took us 2.5 years to write this one. We'll certainly like keep implementing and making it better, but I don't think we have any plans at this time to rewrite the implementation from scratch.
Okay. Let's see here. Mr. Oh, here we go. I like this one. He's got good questions. Is there another crypto project you would be most excited to work with? If so, why? Is there one that you guys would really have a high interest to start with?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely very excited to work with bridge operators, and there are a ton of really great ones. We are talking to some of them, so I can't say like, oh, we're excited about this bridge just in case it doesn't work out. But but yeah, we're very much excited to talk to speak with bridge operators, and again, making sure that we're not the only ones kind of building top Ironfish, and to convince others to build on top Ironfish, because that is how you get a stronger network. But in terms of like a class of projects, I'm most excited to work with bridge operators.
Well, I guess, do you have any questions for me or the crowd or
Oh
anything
man.
like that? Or, we'll do like a little reverse interview here. So,
Oh
do you
gosh.
have any questions for us? For us, I guess, we're pretty heavy GPU miner community in this stream here. Is there
Yeah, I
anything?
mean, I guess my question to you is, what is important to you? Because one of the things I noticed is GPU miners, like they first kind of heard of Ironfish because they're able to mine it, and then the secondary, like the secondary concern for them is like, oh well, what is Ironfish? And so like the fact that Ironfish is all about privacy has been, from my experience, almost like a secondary thing to people. So I guess like my question to you is, what do you care about in a project, and what appeals to you about Ironfish? And yeah, I think that's
So for me, so talking, well, getting, so because I got on a call with you and also with Meg, and getting kind of to know the whole Ironfish team and stuff like that. So you guys being transparent and being like kind of community driven, that's to me one of the first things that I kind of look for in a project, right? Like when I got, because I'm into Flux, I'm into Neoxa, which are also big community driven projects. So that to me is probably the number one thing that I always look for in a project is, are they listening to their community? You know what I mean? Or are they just not really taking it? They don't really care about it. They don't really care about their concerns. They're kind of just going to do their thing, and yeah, people are going to mine it and they don't really care. So I definitely like that the community has a voice and you guys always listen to them.
Thank you for saying that. Someone just asked, what's the meaning behind Ironfish? It's actually on our blog. But just to recap the story real quick, during World War II, the code talkers used, different. What's the right word? Okay, well, just read the blog. It's on our website. So we are
Yeah,
wrapping up. I don't want to take too much
or
time.
either that, or you could hit the rewind button and go back further back in the stream and rewatch. She does answer it and tells the story about it. So be sure to go back and watch it. So um here you go. Here's another one from M Constant. Is businesses need privacy. I've heard of transparent cryptocurrencies are less enticing to them. Do you anticipate businesses will be using Ironfish?
Yeah. So that's one thing that I actually talk about quite a lot, at least internally, of like, non-crypto financial institutions really care about financial privacy. Like for them, privacy is way more than like a human right or a moral thing, but very, very practical. Um, and and so, like for instance, Zether is actually a privacy protocol for Ethereum that was developed by JP Morgan. There is something called Nightfall, which is another privacy protocol. I think it was geared to launch on Polygon. I'm not sure if it has, but that has been a multi-year project from EY. EY is one of the biggest accounting firms like in the world. Very much TradFi. Visa has a pretty extensive internal privacy team, and they definitely care about privacy. So I think like whenever we talk about like, oh, like is privacy good or bad? It's like, well, privacy is actually like a very fundamental need for businesses. So this is very much a very fair assessment. So do I anticipate businesses will use Ironfish? I mean, I definitely hope so. Like how Ironfish is built, it is a layer 1 protocol. So there's not like a thing that you can point to and say like, shut that down. It's really like, even though Ironfish is literally like only a month old, it would be extremely hard / impossible to shut it down, which means that there's no like liability. So like if a JP Morgan was using, Ironfish, for instance, they could do so pretty safely. But again, no promises, no guarantees. I hope, but I don't anticipate.
Not financial advice, exactly.
Not financial advice. None of this is financial advice. I would like to very strongly underline
that. Well, man, we've been going for like an hour and a half, and I don't want to keep taking up too much of your time. So, any last minute questions for Miss Elena? This is speak now or forever hold your guys' peace right now. It's the time to ask.
You can always go to our Discord. The shortcut
you can go there too.
Discord.ironfish.network. Awesome.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Iowa Cryptomine. He says, Elena has been very insightful and appreciate you coming to our small community to educate us on Ironfish. I will second that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really awesome. Thank you so much.
This has been great, guys. I mean, I don't think anyone else has any more questions. Because now we're kind of answering questions that have already been asked earlier on in the stream. Is there anything else that you would like to add, Elena?
No, I think I've kind of said everything. If you are running a project and you would like to integrate with Ironfish, just let us know. If you prefer emails, partnerships@ironfish.network. If you want to speak to us directly, just go to discord.ironfish.network and you'll go to our Discord channel. We're always here. We're always listening. If we don't get to you right away, it's not because we don't like you. It's because maybe we're overwhelmed or we're a small team.
Very busy.
And we will try our best to get to you at some point. But in terms of Discord, like there's always somebody there. So if you really have a burning question, go there.
I have one question because I'm new. I started making some mining pools. How do you guys have a guide, or who do I need to talk to set up an actual Ironfish mining pool? Or is you just set up the node, it's another node or something like that? How does that all work?
So we actually have like an example implementation of a mining pool on our GitHub. And that's actually what we use for testnet phase 2 and 3, I believe. So yeah, I think you should check that out, at least to have an example going.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to call this a show. Thank you so much, Elena, for joining me today. It was, man, so much information just came out today. So appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. You guys have a good night.